everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I love talking about cards.
You guys always crack me up when you do that. But I'm not going to spend much time talking to you guys here in the intro. We are pleased to have with us the gentleman that recommended to us that we talk about the guarded cards from the most recent completed cycle. So I would like to introduce to the community one of our fans of the game and of the podcast. So Kristian, welcome to Card Talk. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, and thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Here we are recording Card Talk, and I think everybody wants to know, who are you and where do you live? What do you do? What's your story here?
I am late 40s. I live in Denmark, which is in Northern Europe. If anyone doesn't know, I am a high school teacher. I teach math and biology.
Yes. Loving
Kindred spirits with David already.
Yes, I'm already loving the high school teacher stuff.
Okay, good. I have two kids, 5 and 9. So they're old enough to disturb me when I play, but also old enough to they've heard The Hobbit on audiobook and read the comics, so they're kind of, is this the part where such and such, and then either it's no, this is something completely else. Oh yes, it's exactly those trolls. Yes,
right. Oh, that's really cool. So this is good because, well, 3 of us have kids then. So you have 2, I have 2, and Grant has 150. So you can actually, in a lot of our recordings, I don't know, Kristian, necessarily how closely you listen, but you can definitely hear Grant's kids and sometimes my kids. You can see them popping up on the screen. So you're in good company here, you know.
It's it's a family friendly
right.
podcast.
So Kristian, let's talk with you a little bit. So how long have you played the game for? What's have you started at the beginning, or did you get in recently, or?
I got in fairly recently. I can't remember exactly when I started, but I think I started around the time when, what is it called? The Arid Mithrin box came out. What is it called? Yeah, Wilds of Ravenia. I think somewhere around there. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really, really new then. That's maybe like a year ago or so.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. Yes.
Yeah, wow, that's great. So as you have, do you have the whole collection, or are you still trying to collect the game, or what's your status?
I've just gotten all the player cards. I don't have any, I'm not interested in Nightmare, so I haven't collected those.
Right.
And I don't have all the print on demand things, and I'm also not. I mean, maybe at some point I'll get them, but I'm not. I'm also not terribly interested in that.
I'm gonna steal Ted's question. Ted always asks this. So what's the way that you primarily play? Do you normally play solo by yourself, or do you play 2-player? Do you have people that you play with, or do you play online? What's the way that you normally play?
Well, I don't play online at all.
Yes.
I've seen some videos, and I think this octagon looks rather clunky. When I want to play card games online, I play Hearthstone.
Okay.
So I play, most of my games are solo, but and I started that just this summer actually. And I mean, I've never really played a solo game before, but that was a lot of fun. I find, and I also have 2 other friends that I play with, and we're playing through, and we have been for a long time playing through the Saga boxes. But one of them just got hit with a nasty case of employment, so that's.
Don't you hate when that's a horrible illness, right?
Yes. Somehow it's really eating away at his playing time.
So, Kristian, this has been a great time, and we were super excited when you sent us the email saying, I guess it was a message through Facebook. So anybody out there that wants to get a hold of us, message us through Facebook. So we were excited to see that you reached out to us to ask us about the guarded cards. But before we talk about the guarded card that you wanted to talk about, let's talk a little bit about your favorites in the game. So what is your favorite hero in the game?
I don't. Yeah, no, I do have a favorite hero. I think that's Radagast.
Radagast. Wow. Okay. So
Yes.
what makes him so awesome?
Well, I think one thing is that he came out while I was playing the game.
Okay.
So I feel that I got to discover him, together with the community. It wasn't like, oh, there is this Eldron and there's this what's it called, Villia deck, and everyone knows how to play that, and but Radagast, I got to find out along with everyone else, and he's also just, he's also just awesome.
He's a great hero. Yeah, definitely. What's your favorite scenario, though? Let's talk about that.
I don't really know that I have one yet. I think I really like the Ringmaker cycle because I really like the overall story of it. I really like this thing that they were kind of, we're telling something that Tolkien could have told, but, being kind of daring and kind of elaborating on the story. I thought that was great.
So last question before we start talking about your card, Kristian. Know how on the rules it says don't read until you've beaten the scenario?
Yes.
Do you not read them until you've beaten the scenario?
I don't read them until I've beaten the scenario, and also, sometimes I'm really impatient to get through the scenario because I want to read it. Because to me,
right.
To me, this insert with the story before and after the scenario, that's really a big part of the gaming experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I actually am one of the guys that don't read the insert. Because I want to feel like achievement unlocked. Okay, now I can go read the story and find out what happens. It's nice to talk to somebody who really appreciates the effort that the game designers put into making that story happen. It's good. But I guess we could sit around and talk about the game all night long, but
well, we're on card talks. We're going to talk about the cards.
We're going to talk about a card. And so right, so it's no secret, everybody out there, that Kristian was the one that suggested to us that we talk about the 7 guarded X cards, and with that we also talked about Bilbo, or Tactics Bilbo, and then we also talked about the King's Return, or we will be talking about the King's Return, which is an event that goes and fetches those cards. But Kristian, we asked Kristian to pick a guarded card and come on the show and talk about it. So Kristian, I'll turn the floor over to you and say, which guarded card did you decide for us to tackle on the show?
I chose that we should talk about Ring of Thror.
Okay, Ring of Thror. So what is the Ring of Thror? If you have it in front of you, could you read down through it and tell us what it does?
Yes. It's a 1-cost neutral attachment. It's unique. Ring of Thror. It's an artifact ring. It's guarded, enemy or location. And it says, attach to a dwarf hero. Action. Exhaust Ring of Thror and discard the top card of your deck to ready attached hero. If the discarded card is an attachment, put it into play.
Okay, that's quite a card. So it's your show. Tell us what you think of the card. What's your first take on it?
I was actually thinking that we kind of go through it from top to bottom, just to be sure that we don't miss out on anything.
Sure. Okay, so what do you think of the name of the card?
Actually, even
I'm just kidding.
Okay, no.
Okay.
No. because I mean, I have thought a lot about this card, and I even have something to say about the title of it.
Okay.
Because I mean, this game has a lot of Thror's stuff in it.
Right.
So there is Thror's map and Thror's key, but now they switch around the grammar, and it's not Thror's ring, but Ring of Thror.
Right. So
that's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that actually happened. I don't know if that's a design issue or if, and this is where I toss it over to the people who know better than me, like Grant. Maybe I don't know if the Ring of Thror was mentioned in the books proper.
There was mention of Thror's ring whilst he was being held by the necromancer, but other than that, as far as I can recall, there wasn't much more said on the ring.
Okay, so was it called Thror's Ring or the Ring of Thror, though?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go back and reread.
If you look at the flavor text at the bottom, you can see that there's a little bit from the Return of the King, so it was definitely in the books.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting to bring that out. Well, what's the next thing that you had on your list to talk about? Cost of one? I think that's the next thing, right?
Yes. So I mean, and it's neutral. When we're evaluating the card, it's just good to think about that it can go in any deck and it's cheap.
Yeah, and I think that it's and this is where there's a little more to it, is that the cost of the card, yes, it's one neutral resource, which is great for these guarded cards. So I think the real cost of the card is that guarded enemy or location, and it not necessarily the one cost. It's almost like that one neutral resource is really just a nominal fee to pay to get it into the staging area. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, compared to, some of the other guarded cards are from different spheres, right? There are the two swords, one from law and one from leadership, and there is the mithril shirt from spirit, and there is sting from tactics. Yes, right. So, but this is neutral at least.
Right. So 3 of them are neutral, but I think the cost being 1 isn't really the cost, right?
No.
I mean, is that a normal? Like, I think, and we've talked about this before. Ted, what were you going to say?
Like if it cost more than 1, if any of the guarded cards were 2 cost, in addition to having the guarded keyword, that would put them, I think, in the realm of, being much more difficult to pay for and play. So,
yeah, and
I think it's in line.
Yeah, I think that actually, and I think I've said this before on the other shows, but the fact that it's guarded enemy or location that's the roll of the dice that you're taking with this cost, is that, if it were guarded enemy like Sting or guarded location like the mithril shirt, I would like it more, because then I could plan what I'm doing a little more easily, as opposed to this where it's guarded enemy or location, and most decks are going to be 70% enemies or locations. So, I mean, you're really rolling the dice. So it's a hard decision when to actually put this ring into play and try to get it onto one of your dwarf heroes. So
yes,
yeah,
I completely agree. And if anyone out there is interested in more about these guarded locations, I think in the Arkenstone episode, you really covered it nicely, the different kind of tricks and stuff you can do if you want with guarded cards.
Yeah, and I think that Ted and Grant and I have talked a little bit about it, but like you can, if you get a location, you can do Mariner's Compass and you can get rid of the location, or if you have an enemy, you can do Put Off Pursuit and do that. So there's some options to get rid of those cards guarding it, but I don't know.
And if you do happen to be having leadership in your deck, we did the episode about the King's Return,
right.
Which we discussed the benefits of that too, and that can also really, really help with these cards as well.
Yeah, because the King's Return, that event allows you to bring it into play kind of whenever you want after you've dealt with what am I trying to think of?
Yeah, after questing.
After questing, right? After questing and staging and all that stuff. So, and then Reforged also helps you kind of circumvent that issue. So, because that's an event that gets you around that. The timing of it, you can't. There's been a hard and fast rule that said you can't get around the guarded aspect of it. But there's a couple of cards that can get around the timing of it, which can help a lot.
Yes.
But I mean, now we get into the card itself, right? It's a dwarf. You attach it to a dwarf hero, and it has that action. So, Kristian, what do you think? What's the scoop here?
Well, I mean, attached to a dwarf hero, I think I was kind of thinking, maybe now the hobbits have fast hitch and the elves have Light of Valinor, and now the dwarves get Ring of Thror. Maybe there is sort of
I never thought about
that's a really good insight. That
both Ted and I are like,
the same
whoa. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Keep going with that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
It's just
No. That's
good. I never thought about the trait specific readying abilities. So.
Yeah. Yes. So that to me there is. I mean, the action consists of 2 sentences. Mm-hmm. There is the exhaust and discard the top card to ready attached hero. So that's like one ability. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other ability. If the discarded card is an attachment, put it into play. And I think there's almost like a personality test here. Are you I want to untap kind of guy, or an I want to get a free attachment kind of person? It's like, are you a cat or a dog person?
Right.
And to my mind, and from playing with the ring, I think the second sentence is, I think that's kind of a trick almost or something. You get these dreams of putting in free attachments, and I think it's
Citadel plate after Citadel plate. 4 cost attachments in your whole deck. You just keep wanting to bring them out, right?
Yes. Yeah. So if we try to look at that thing, then I think, first of all, I mean, what I did was I went on RingsDB and looked, okay, which are the expensive attachments? Okay. And there are not really all that many. You have these, the 4 from the 4 spheres, this ring, what's it called, book and scroll and...
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep, the records. So the Scroll of Isildur, the Book of... I was going to say the Book of Mozarble, but that's not it. The Book of Eldakar, yes, we know those very well, right?
Yeah. So, and I mean, they're very specific. I don't think you generally want to play those, especially not if you're running with several different spheres, because, is it then going to fit? Yep. And if you run just one sphere, then... you don't need to get them into play for free. And then there is something like Path of Need. Okay, that's limit 1 per deck. And then you have, I think the main ones is Citadel Plate, like you mentioned, and Ancestral Armor.
Mm-hmm. 4 cost armor attachments that do lots of good stuff.
Yes, but which is then only on a leadership or noble hero. And which is also restricted.
Right, the Ancestral Armor is. Citadel Plate can go on anybody.
Yeah, and it's not restricted. But and also some of the other good attachment that you might like to put into play for free, and also which can be outside of sphere. That's another aspect, of course. I mean, for example, Raiment of War. Mm-hmm. That's really nice to put into play for free, but it takes up all double restricted spots. Right. So then, you can only put 1 on a hero, and then you're done with that. So, yeah. Right. So I think there is I think there is a good put attachment into play for free dwarf deck, but I think that deck is played with well equipped.
Right.
I think that's just a much better card if you want to do that. I especially, I mean, I playtested this, and I mean, I didn't playtest a lot, but the first game I played with the Spirit Dane and Gandalf, and I had well equipped on the top of my deck, and I thought, okay, I'll play it with Gandalf and see what happens. And I got, so first turn I got Steward of Gondor into play for free.
Right.
So then I was just, wow, this well equipped is just much better than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well equipped. And the ring both work very well in conjunction with any deck manipulation. Gandalf and Imladr Stargazer too. I'd say the top two effects to do that.
Gildor and
Yes.
Glorian's the other one.
Gildor
right?
and Glorian also common. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Kristian.
Go ahead.
No, you.
Okay.
You go. You go.
Okay, good. But I think there is a. I mean, do you want to play well equipped and guarded attachments in the same deck? That's.
It's really rolling the dice. Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you have the Stargazer, you know all the first 5 cards. But if you, for example, just have Gandalf, you can only see the top one.
Well, this brings up a good point that I don't think we've talked about really, Kristian. So let me ask you this: Is it worth playing a guarded card, forgetting your own deck, but with scrying effects so you can see what's coming up on the encounter deck? Like, is that something that is thought provoking?
To my mind, no. I think, like you said just a little bit before, that when you have the guarded card, I think you just wait for a reasonable time to have an extra location or an extra enemy, and then that's the real cost of the card, that you get something that you don't know what is, and you just deal with that. I think, I mean, actually, if you want to get really techie, then when I heard your episode with I think Ian Martin, is that the name? Yeah, when he was talking about the Palantir.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you could even play that, right? But I mean, it just gets so complicated that I don't think it's worth it.
So this is, let me ask either Grant or Ted this. Isn't there a card that allows you to reduce the number of cards that you reveal from the counter deck during staging by down to 0?
No, not down to 0, but you can reduce it to 1, which is Gildor's Council. There is a tactics event that may reduce it to 0, but I cannot remember for certain.
So, go ahead.
There's
go ahead.
that's good. Grant Gildor's Council, and the tactics card you're referring to is Wait No Longer.
That's the one.
And it goes down to 0?
Yeah, it goes down to 0. So if you look at the top 5 cards of the deck and you put an enemy into play, engage with you, and then you do 1 less card to a minimum of 0. Same thing goes with the lore card that does a similar thing with a location, and I believe it's the Hidden Way.
Okay, yeah, and I was thinking that you have this in a guarded deck, or a deck that uses guarded, the Hidden Way, or what was the tactics one again?
Wait No Longer.
Wait No Longer. You could play the one of the two, reduce it down to 0 cards being revealed, and then play your guarded card, and then that's your review. And then you're at least getting an enemy or a location, and not a treachery. I mean, that's something that's a workaround we haven't really thought of before.
Yeah, that's a really good point, David. I built a couple of decks once around deck manipulating the encounter deck.
Right. And
both of the decks consisted of all of those cards. And another card I put in there was a Shadow in the Past, which is a 2-cost neutral card that lets you return encounter from the discard pile to the top of the deck.
Top of the deck.
I think it's just the top card, isn't it?
Yep, but the timing, it may work out where you happen to kill maybe a weaker enemy, or a location that's relatively easy to deal with, and you can put it on top of the deck so that will be the card guarding your attachment when you play it.
Yeah.
I guess the big question is it worth doing all of this to get something
Just
like
to get the ring.
Ring of Thror or any of them, Mithril Shirt or, like the Arkenstone or something like that?
My question on it, if you don't mind me asking a question, David, is it says attached to a dwarf hero, so there's a lot of targets for that. So I think you mentioned Spirit Dane. Is he your primary, like your hero of choice?
No, I actually think this should go on what is it called? Thorin Oakenshield. Or he's at least one good target because he has 3 willpower and 3 attack. So
Certainly.
Yeah. I mean, at first I thought, well, they should obviously go on the old Dane because you really want him to always be untapped.
Right.
But
also a great target, both Danes.
Yes, but the old Dane, sometimes he will just sit there and do nothing, when I play him at least, and sometimes he will defend, and then, okay, sometimes it's nice to have the attack boost back, but sometimes it's also not that relevant, so yeah.
To add my twist on this is that I've found that putting this on Spirit Dine is phenomenal because not because he can ready or not because he can quest really well, but because he can defend and then he has a decent attack. And if you're playing like a Dwarf Swarm or you're playing cards that can boost attack and defense or whatever, like all of a sudden Spirit Dine can defend and attack, can defend for 6. But then he can ready, and then he can go up and hit something. I mean, he's got 2 attack, which it's not horrible.
Yeah. Okay.
Or multiple defense,
And here's where I get really weird on you. Is I like to have Silver Lamp in that deck. So the Silver Lamp is an attachment that you put on a ready spirit hero. And you deal all the shadow cards face up. So if you got Spirit Dine ready to go, then then all of a sudden your lamp is ready to go. So that's where I end up going with Ring of Thror.
When I've been playing it lately, I've been playing it on Bomber.
Wait. Stop your Bomber. Why? Okay, go ahead. Explain why.
Right. As some people may know, me and Samuel Sheave are have been doing a lot of little projects lately, and the one that we've been covering at the minute is doing his narrative campaign. Well, we're in the Khazad-dûm box at the minute, and we're going through with a few dwarves. And I've ended up playing with Bomber, and he's actually quite a sturdy defender. So,
well, he's got a 5 hit points, and how much defense does he have?
He's got 2 defense.
He's got 2 defense, so he can soak up a hill troll attack.
Yeah, when you accompany him with self-preservation and some other cards, he's actually very good. We've been soaking up cave troll hits and what have you. And the Ring of Thror actually works quite well for that 2nd defense on Bomber or the 3rd defense on Bomber, whatever we need it to be. I'm actually considering doing more games with Bomber.
If you're gonna...
does Bomber need 2 rings to be able to ready off the attack?
Oh, that was good. And then I guess this discussion brings us back to really what is it that you're readying your dwarves for to get? What are you using the extra ready for? If you're using Spirit Dine, it's probably obvious you're using Spirit Dine to ready so that you can defend probably twice. If you're using for Leadership Dine, you're probably using him to quest or defend, but then to ready so that he stays ready for his bonuses. And Grant with with defense, you're doing that, but with Bomber. But what are you using the extra ready for when you have a dwarf hero out? Like a dwarf like Glowin, he's a kind of nondescript dwarf. Do you put the Ring of Thror on Glowin to use him to quest twice for 2 or to attack twice for 2? Probably not, but what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Can I say wrong answer to that question because of the fact that if you're playing the Ring of Thror and you put it on either, say, the nondescript dwarves, likes of Glowin, it just gives you an extra availability. So, for example, if you're taking on a hill troll or taking on the Watcher in the Water or something like that, you're questing with them or you're defending with them, but you can also attack with them. You can do what the situation calls for.
Yeah, Kristian, you were going to say something. What were you going to say?
Yes, I think this doesn't really belong in a deck where you have Spirit. I think if you want this effect in a Spirit deck, I think you just play Unexpected Courage. I think that's much simpler.
One more resource for not being guarded, absolutely. Fair trade. But yeah, it's a good point. It does help. For because it's neutral, it can go in any non-spirit decks and give you an extra reading effect. And there's a lot of great targets. Both versions of Gimli, I think, are great targets. Huge number, so a lot of flexibility with this card.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I was going with the question, is that just that action advantage is probably really nice to have. And then I guess the other question along with which heroes goes, what kind of deck do you put this in? I feel like this doesn't go into just a standard Dwarf Swarm deck, because that, in general, you're not running a ton of attachments, I don't think. You're probably running Feely, Keely, a whole bunch of dwarves, the Erebor Battlemaster, the Erebor Battlemaster, a couple other,
So to my mind, it just goes in basically any dwarf deck that's not Spirit. And then I think you would just put in one copy, and then sometimes you draw it and sometimes you don't, and then when you draw it, you see whether you play it when you can, and you clear it as soon as you can, and then you have this effect, and it'll just be kind of good. But I don't think it's something that you want to be like building your deck around in any way.
Grant brought up some good points when he's talking about Bomber, some great attachments for Bomber, like a Burning Brands and self-preservation, and the effect of Thrower's Ring to be able to, if you get an attachment off the top of your deck, you're both like playing free cards. It's almost like a mini Villia effect. You're not only drawing a card and then you're playing it and not paying the resources. So that's a huge effect. Even for playing a 1 or 2 cost card. I played used Well Equipped for an Unexpected Courage to get played on a character, and the Ring would do the same thing.
Right. And
that's a lot to just put on the table, like a free.
You get a
free attachment,
free Unexpected Courage. I mean, you get to ready your hero with the Ring of Thror. Think about this, and then you bring in another Unexpected Courage, and then you can ready your hero again if you're playing with Unexpected Courage in the deck. And that's something that can happen in turn 1 or 2.
Yeah, but like a free Steward of Gondor, a free like I said, if the self-preservation is 3 resources, there's a lot of great attachments.
yeah.
That can, even just to get free weapons, they have a lot of weapons, a lot of ring mail.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton for dwarves.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think about those points that we just brought up there, Kristian?
I'm not sold. I think it's but I think those effects are of course great, but I think you can get those better in other ways. Also because if, for example, if we take ancestral armor,
Mhm.
okay, so in a Gandalf Dine, or however you pronounce his name, deck, Gandalf can't wear it because he's not noble or leadership,
Mhm.
and Dine doesn't really. He's noble, and I also, by the way, realized that the old Dine is not noble. That really irritated me to find out.
It's super
A lot
annoying.
of people thought that as well. Yeah, we're a little upset by that.
But the new Dine doesn't really need it because he can already boost his defense sky high. So, and especially also because the ring can come on so slowly, because first you have to draw it, then you have to find a window in the game where you feel that you can manage a second location or enemy, then you have to play it, then you have to maybe clear the active location, or and then travel and then clear the location, or you have to engage the enemy and then kill him, and I mean, and but then if once you get the ring on, the untap effect, or that's Magic the Gathering, the readying effect is relevant immediately. But the free attachment is then, that's then again, okay, is there an attachment? And yeah, I mean, I'm by no means an expert on the game at all, or on deck building or anything, but I mean, I tried it a bit, and yeah, I'm just not sold. I think, if you're lucky enough to, in your, let's say, leadership lore dwarf deck, you should be happy to ready, and then if you're lucky enough to get a free attachment, okay, that's fine, but I don't think it's something that's worth building around in any way. And I think in the Dine Gandalf deck, I think you should also just play 3 on an unexpected courage, and that's probably all the readying that you need.
I wanted to circle back on the traits. What were the traits? Is it just artifact and ring?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually really nice, the fact that this card is not an item attachment. Because there are a few scenarios in the game that will penalize you, prevent you from playing item attachments, or take them away from you.
Right.
But since this is artifact traded, it's actually on the same power level as I think some of the other rings of power. So they're not necessarily subject to to those effects. So that's kind of a extra perk.
Yeah.
Right. So I think kind of some of that stuff when you're talking about the traits, we always talk about, the fact that it's an artifact will trigger an extra hit point for the Ring of Barahir.
Yep, that as well.
But the ring, I don't think the ring ring trait really triggers off of it has any general.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but
Soon.
What's that, Grant?
But it may be coming soon.
Yeah, right.
True.
And then the lack of item just means you can't pass it around with like the Long Lake Trader and stuff, right?
No, you can't.
So it needs to be an item in order for the Long Lake Trader to do its thing. So that can be annoying. But I don't think if you're playing Ring of Thror, you're probably playing a Dale deck with Long Lake Trader in it. But
you probably have a target in mind, and it's already going to go to that target.
Right. So I don't know. Does anybody? What last gasps do we have about the Ring of Thror?
I think the shade of blue, whatever gem that is, I don't know if it's like a sapphire. It looks beautiful.
Yes.
Like, I look at the card and I like really want to play it because I'm like, damn, that is a good looking ring.
It is a good looking ring. It's sexy.
But actually, if we're talking about the art for a second,
yeah,
if you compare those what they call like grooves on the table, doesn't the ring look too big?
It does look heavy. I don't know if it looks. I don't know.
I got like fat dwarf hands, right? So maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Fat dwarf hands.
Right? They got like sturdy dwarf hands.
A question for all of you: are you happy to see this card in your opening hand in your dwarf non-spirit deck? is this the card that you want to start with?
Go ahead, Grant.
No, I'll let you. You were just about to speak there, David.
I was just going to say that this card for me, I want in the 3rd to 5th round. After I've kind of gotten that initial staging taken care of, whatever the issues are, this is the card that because I don't want to bring anything out early game, but it's not going to help me much late game. An extra ready does help me a little bit late game, but this is definitely a card that I want to see like third round to 5th round. Not when I haven't won the game yet, and I still need something. So that's my take.
Yeah.
What about you, Grant?
I'd like to see it from, say, turn 2 or turn 3, around that time, so that way, if I can get it out early, it's a bonus. If I don't get it out, it's not such a big deal, but I'd still like to have it available if needed.
Ted, do you have any opinion?
Yeah, it's I agree with kind of the same line of thought you guys have, where early game is usually the biggest struggle for not all the scenarios, but for a large portion of them, especially more recent ones. You kind of need to start quickly.
Right.
Mount willpower, mount a big defense, or a high attack value. And the downside, I'd say, to guarded cards in general is they don't help you jumpstart, because they do the opposite.
Right. They
Yes.
anti-jumpstart.
Yeah. So, but its effect, it can quickly help you recover. By if you manage to free it through some trick, or just being able to go to the location or kill the enemy, it'll really help you come through the next turn, now that you have a ready and you might get a free attachment out of it.
Yeah, and I also think that this is not a 3 of in your hand. Not that I think like many unique cards aren't 3 of in your deck. So I think that you run 2 of these in a deck if you want to see it, and you just take your chances. Does that sound about right?
I think you just run 1 of these, and then the more you want to see it, the more the King's Return you run.
Okay.
And then if you want to be sure to get some value out of your King's Returns, then you run some more guarded attachments.
You run different guarded attachments.
Yeah. Not
okay,
the same.
So which ones do you run over King of Thror?
The Return of the Ring.
Right, the Return of the Ring. Right. which guarded attachments do you run over the Ring of Thror? Like we were talking about the Arkenstone and how powerful, at least you and I think the Arkenstone is a pretty powerful effect. So that one, what others do we run over the Ring of Thror?
Well, it's not over, because let's say you have 3 the King's Return, then you should see 1 of those, right? And then you can get the card that you want. So, if you're, for example, planning on putting the Ring of Thror on Thor and Oakenshield, then maybe you want to try to also get him to have what is this sword called? Orcrist?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that he can then at first quest and then attack, or I think that very much depends on your deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To my mind, that's the way to go.
Yeah, if you're certainly playing leadership, just talking to guarded cards in general, running I'd say like a couple copies of King's Return, 2, maybe 3, and then maybe running just 1 of each. I'll run 3 guarded cards and 2 King's Return, and you kind of fish out the ones you want strategically. That could be a very powerful effect.
Yeah,
to get those cards out.
And I guess it comes back down to what we've said throughout the show, is that if you can control either your deck and when you can pull that stuff out, or the encounter deck, then that's really good stuff, right? Well, should we try to ring this guy? Kristian, in case you don't know, we'll go through it with you. We have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank our cards on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, and a 10 is where we take that card and throw it back from the fiery chasm from whence it came. So, Kristian, you're the guest on the show, so you get to choose. Do you want to go? Do you want to go first, second, third, or fourth for your ring rating?
I'll go last.
You'll go last. Okay. So, Ted, I'm nominating you to go first.
Okay, if I were to ring this card, I'd rate it a Thror.
Does that fall right after 3 and right before Thrive?
Yep. Sorry, I had to burn that one out.
Yeah, that's good.
Thinking of that one the whole episode.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yes, as far as rating this card goes, it's restricted to dwarf characters for its effect, but its effect is quite powerful, and it's still neutral, so it can go on any of the dwarf heroes. It's got the same reservations of it being a guarded card, that all of them carry. Mm-hmm. But being able to ready, it fits thematically into the dwarfs too, into the mining deck by flipping over cards, but you can't always guarantee an attachment. You can we discussed a few ways, so I'd rate this one a 5 because its effect is quite powerful to get free cards, to be able to ready, but it's not, only half its effect is consistent.
Right.
I'll say.
Yeah. And I'll go.
Was that a 4 or 5?
A 5.
That was a 5. Okay. And I'll go next, Grant, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it, Matt.
So, I'm also going to have to rate this guarded card a 5 for all the things that Ted just said. And Kristian made a really good point that the fact that this goes on a dwarf and it doesn't go in all the dwarf decks. I think that there's other cards that do this. I may even go a little bit lower to a 6. I said a 5, so I'll say a 5. But, it's, while it's really good and kind of assists in the dwarf mining deck, people were successfully running dwarf mining before this card came along. So this isn't, a linchpin in that sort of scenario or that sort of deck type. So, I'm going to have to go with a 5, the 6 side of 5. So,
just like the Thror side,
right? Right. It's not the Thror side of Thrive. It's the
Thrive,
the Thrix part of Thrive. So, so the 5. We'll go with a 5 there. Grant, what do you think of Thror's Ring?
I like Thror's Ring, and I can understand where you guys are coming from, but I'm still going to give it a 4. It's not going to go in every dwarf deck I make, but it's definitely going to be a card I think about above Unexpected Courage because of the fact that you need the access to Spirit for Unexpected Courage. This is a way to mitigate some of that. So, like I say, I'm giving it a 4.
Okay, Kristian, you asked for last.
Yes.
What do you say, my friend?
I will give it a 5, and for basically exactly the same reasons that Ted said. I mean, once you have it in play, it's really good, but getting it into play is difficult and maybe even a bit too difficult for what it does.
Okay, so there we have it. We have Thror's Ring, and of course, we have to close this episode with a huge card talk thank you to our Dutch contingency from Denmark here, right? Dutch or Danish? Dutch is Netherlands, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So you're not Netherlands. This is Danish contingency from Denmark. So, okay, yes. So I apologize for that, but thank you so much, Kristian, for making it on the show and taking time out of your evening to visit us.
And thank you very much for having me. And can I also just say to all the listeners that all I did to start this whole big series about guarded cards was just to write a simple message saying that I would really like to hear something about this. So, I mean, Card Talk is very open for comments. So if you have anything that you'd like for them to do, maybe try to contact them and you can have
Well, there was that one guy that made a suggestion, and then we killed him. But
he got lost like the dwarf rings.
yeah, right. The dragon ate him, right? But that was just one. That was just one guy. Everybody else has really good ideas. So.
Yeah, thanks, Kristian, for pointing that out. People can reach us on Facebook. I think is the most common way. But David, you would know other best ways to reach out to us.
Yeah, Facebook, cardtalk2018@gmail is our email address. So that's always good. And you can always leave a comment in the video below. We have, we read our comments all the time. So, yeah. So, Kristian, thank you for the nice words. And also, again, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me.
Okay. Join us again as we talk about more cards from the game. Have a great day, everybody. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed cardtalk2018.libsyn.org for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.